It was 480 BCE. The Persian Empire, known as the Achaemenid Empire under Xerxes I, had brought the full weight of its vast imperial fleet to bear upon a fractured and threatened Greece. Having already scorched Athens, Xerxes believed victory was imminent. But the waters between the island of Salamis and the Greek mainland would soon shatter that illusion, decisively. Themistocles, the Athenian naval commander, knowing the Persians relied on their numerical superiority, orchestrated a plan that turned the narrow straits into a trap. His message to Xerxes, intentionally deceptive, suggested that the Greeks were disorganized and ready to flee. Xerxes took the bait. On the morning of battle, more than 100 to 200 Persian ships crowded into the constricted channel. The Greek fleet, composed of approximately 370 triremes, waited silently. Then they surged forward. These warships, known as triremes for their 3 rows of oars, were lighter and more maneuverable than the heavier Persian vessels. In tight waters, that agility proved decisive. Herodotus, the 5th century BCE historian known as the Father of History, described the confusion in the Persian ranks as chaos among ships. They crashed into each other and broke their oars. What followed was a rout. Greek ships rammed and shattered their enemies with brutal precision. The Persians, unable to maneuver, were caught in a death trap of their own making. The losses were staggering. Conservative estimates suggest that the Persians lost over 300 ships, while Greek losses were minimal in comparison. As Persian sailors drowned or were hacked down during boarding assaults, Xerxes, watching from a golden throne on the shore, witnessed his dream of subjugating Greece collapse into ruin. This was no ordinary victory. Salamis saved the Greek heartland from invasion, ensuring that Western civilization would not grow under the shadow of Achaemenid rule. In the wake of this naval triumph, the tide of the Persian wars turned. The sea had devoured an empire's hope and spat out the defiant will of a united Greece. Mylae, Rome's first brutal clash with Carthage. In 260 BCE, during the First Punic War, 2 rising Mediterranean powers collided at sea for the first time, Rome and Carthage. The site, Mylae, off the northern coast of Sicily. The stakes, control of key sea routes, and dominance in the Western Mediterranean. For Rome, a land-based republic with no significant naval history, it was a true baptism by fire. Carthage, a seasoned maritime empire with centuries of naval experience, fielded a fleet of about 130 warships. Rome, just beginning to assemble a navy from scratch, launched approximately 145 newly built ships, modelled largely on a captured Carthaginian quinquereme. But Rome added one game-changing innovation, the corvus, a boarding bridge fitted with a heavy spike, designed to hook onto enemy decks and turn sea battles into infantry fights, where Roman discipline and close combat skill could dominate. The Roman fleet was commanded by Gaius Duilius, a consul with no prior naval background. As the Carthaginian fleet approached with confidence, they expected an easy victory. But as they closed in, the corvus mechanisms slammed down. Roman marines surged across the bridges in tight formation. Ship after ship fell, not through traditional naval ramming tactics, but through brutal hand-to-hand combat on the decks. By the end of the battle, Carthage had lost around 50 ships, with 30 captured intact. Rome, remarkably, lost only 11 ships, a stunning result for a navy that had never before engaged in a major sea battle. Ancient historian Polybius later described the psychological impact of the victory. Rome had shaken off its fear of the sea and proven it could challenge even the greatest naval power of the age. Duilius returned to Rome as the first commander to celebrate a naval triumph. To commemorate the victory, a rostral column, decorated with the bronze rams of captured enemy ships, was erected in the Roman Forum. The Battle of Mylae marked more than a tactical victory. It was a shocking reversal of expectations. Rome, the untested land power, had bloodied the nose of a seasoned naval empire and signalled that a new force was rising on the Mediterranean horizon. Cape Ecnomus, the largest naval battle of antiquity. In 256 BCE, during the height of the First Punic War, Rome and Carthage collided in what ancient sources describe as the largest naval battle of the ancient world, Cape Ecnomus, off the southern coast of Sicily. This was not a mere confrontation between fleets. It was a calculated gamble by Rome to strike at the Carthaginian homeland in North Africa. The Roman fleet, led by consuls Marcus Atilius Regulus and Lucius Manlius Vulso Longus, comprised roughly 330 warships and was accompanied by transports carrying about 140,000 men, including sailors, rowers and legionaries. Carthage responded with a slightly smaller but still immense fleet of around 350 ships, commanded by Hanno and Hamilcar, not to be confused with Hannibal's father of the same name. What followed off Cape Ecnomus was a sea battle of unprecedented scale and intensity. When the fleets engaged, the battle splintered into multiple brutal clashes. The corvus once again proved decisive. Roman marines boarded Carthaginian vessels in wave after disciplined wave. Polybius describes the struggle as a contest not of seamanship but of hand-to-hand slaughter. Carthage lost about 100 ships, either sunk or captured, over 28% of its force. Roman losses were recorded as 24 ships, a relatively modest figure given the scale. The battle ended with a staggering Roman victory, paving the way for Regulus's ill-fated invasion of Africa. Cape Ecnomus was not just a numerical triumph, it was a declaration. Rome could now dominate the seas as effectively as it had mastered the land. The Mediterranean had a new naval hegemon, forged not by centuries of seafaring tradition, but by brutal innovation and relentless discipline. Artemisium, Greece's desperate defense at sea. While the Persian army scorched its path southward through Greece in 480 BCE, the Greek fleet took its stand at Cape Artemisium, a narrow strait off the northern coast of Euboea. It was a simultaneous counterpart to the more famous land battle at Thermopylae, and like Thermopylae, Artemisium was a desperate act of resistance against overwhelming odds. The allied Greek fleet, led primarily by Athens and Sparta, numbered about 271 triremes. They faced a far larger Persian fleet, which, according to Herodotus, initially comprised over 1,200 ships, though losses from storms in the Aegean had already weakened the force before engagement. The Greeks chose Artemisium strategically. It was a narrow space that neutralized Persian numerical superiority, forcing the engagement into tight waters where maneuverability mattered more than size. Though losses are difficult to estimate precisely, Herodotus records that the Greeks lost about 40 ships, around 15% of their fleet, while Persian losses numbered over 200 vessels, either sunk in battle or lost to the storm. Historian Diodorus Siculus later emphasized the courage it took for the Greeks to fight, knowing they were outnumbered nearly 5-1. At Artemisium, the Greek alliance showed that even in retreat, it could draw blood, and that the struggle for their homeland would be fought not just on land, but in the treacherous currents of the sea. Drepana, Carthage's stunning ambush on Roman waters. In 249 BCE, during the First Punic War, the Roman Republic suffered one of its most humiliating naval defeats, an event that would haunt its military pride for years. The Battle of Drepana, fought off the western coast of Sicily near the Carthaginian stronghold of Drepana, modern-day Trapani, was not merely a defeat, it was an annihilation orchestrated with ruthless precision. Rome had laid siege to Lilybaeum, a key Carthaginian port, and aimed to tighten the blockade with a surprise naval strike on nearby Drepana. Consul Publius Claudius Pulcher led a fleet of 123 warships, sailing by night to maintain the element of surprise. But Pulcher committed a critical error. He launched the attack in poor formation, his ships strung out and disorganized. Carthage's admiral Adherbal seized the moment. Known as a commander of exceptional composure, he ordered his entire fleet, estimated at around 100 ships, to launch from Drepana's harbour and meet the Romans at sea. The Carthaginian ships, superior in both speed and seamanship, immediately took the offensive. Pulcher's fleet, caught off guard and jammed against the rocky coastline, had no room to manoeuvre. Roman ships were rammed and boarded in rapid succession. The sea became a killing ground. Ancient sources, including Polybius, state that 93 Roman ships were lost, either sunk or captured, over 75% of Pulcher's fleet. Carthage, in contrast, lost not a single vessel. The consequences were catastrophic. Over 20,000 Roman sailors and marines were killed or captured, a staggering loss that underscored the depth of the defeat. Pulcher was already notorious for disregarding religious omens. Before the battle, when the sacred chickens used in divination refused to eat, a bad sign, he reportedly mocked the ritual and threw them overboard, saying, "If they won't eat, let them drink." The act shocked many in Rome. After the disastrous defeat at Drepana, Pulcher was recalled, put on trial, and heavily fined. To the Roman people, this wasn't just a military blunder, it was divine punishment for defying the gods. Drepana wasn't just a tactical catastrophe. It exposed Rome's vulnerability at sea, and for several years after, the Republic avoided major naval engagements. Carthage had struck a blow that reminded its enemies the sea was its dominion, and missteps would be punished without mercy. Naval battles of the ancient Mediterranean were not mere clashes of fleets. They were crucibles where civilizations rose or fell. Each encounter revealed the unforgiving nature of war at sea, where strategy, desperation, and fate collided. These confrontations reshaped empires, silenced dynasties, and redefined the balance of power for centuries. In witnessing them, we glimpse not only history, but humanity's fiercest contests for survival. How do you think naval supremacy influenced the course of ancient imperial ambitions? Comment below. As Thucydides recorded, "He who commands the sea has command of everything."